The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your financial advisor. "2026 is almost here, and for many of us, thinking about preparing for a new year's potential financial challenges sounds daunting. But you don't have to make major lifestyle changes in order to make a major difference. Joining me today is Brandon Vernon of Steward Financial Services. What are the small financial adjustments that make the biggest difference in the following year, in your opinion?
I think the first thing they need to do is they actually need to sit down and create a goal, figure out something that they want to accomplish for the year. Do I want to pay off a debt? Do I want to add additional to my retirement account? Are we wanting to add to our grandkids' 529 plan? Create a goal, and then from there, they're able to put a plan in place to meet that goal. My wife and I, in 2010, I had started my own business, and we had gone against some of our rules that we had for the amount of debt that we were going to carry. And we had decided in December to have what we called the year of fiscal prudence. And we were going to track all of our spending for 2 months, every penny. If we put money into a vending machine, we were going to track it down to the penny of where our monies were going. And our goal was to pay some debt off that year. And so by doing so, we decided we would only eat out once a week. We would only go on vacation close to home to save some funds. But by going through that process, a couple funny things happened. Our kids would be like, "Hey, let's go out to eat." And I'd be like, "Are you going to pay for it?" And they're like, "Oh, no, it's fine to eat at home."
Yeah, the tone changes real quick.
Right? When it's coming out of their pocket. But the funny thing is, it allowed us to reset on what we felt we really needed and wanted. Sometimes in the world, there's a lot of things that you think that you need, but they're really a want. And by going through that process and doing that, we were able to reduce the debt that we wanted to. But we also started, cutting back. And the other benefit that we had is we spent more time together as a family, eating dinner around the table, and doing those things. So putting a plan in place, but also being really strict to it for that year was hugely beneficial in where our mindset was financially and what we really wanted going forward.
I'm sure it was hard at times. We're all human, and sometimes it can be hard to stick to those guidelines that we've put in place for ourselves. So how'd you keep the momentum going?
There was a couple things that happened. One, we started seeing results, right? We had some excess money that was coming in that was paying off the debt. So that was nice because we were meeting the goal that we were setting. Two, it was a decision we had to make, right? Like my wife and I, when we got married, decided we'd only have 2 debts ever, whether that's a car loan, whether that's a credit card. And so we expanded upon that. And so bringing that back into some of the goals that we had, to minimize our debt. It was funny because my brother-in-law was teasing me. He says, "It's not the year of financial prudence. It's the year of famine." He's like, you guys are having the year of famine at your house, not the year of financial prudence. So even other people saw it, right? Like, because we wouldn't go out to dinner, we wouldn't do those things. But by doing it, we seen success. The hardest part was the first 2 months tracking all of our debt and tracking every penny spent, because you don't want to do that. Like, I remember going to put money into the vending machine and saying to myself, "I got to write this down. I got to say I spent this." And that was the biggest, but it was an eye opener of where we could save money. We're spending money here and doing that. So, but the biggest thing that we were able to see from it was the results and applying those results. And it happened fairly quick.
Yeah. Did you notice that when you started tracking every penny that was going out, that it discouraged you from maybe like taking that trip to the vending machine or buying those little things that you don't really need? Because you're like, gosh, now I got to go and track this.
The stopping in it when you're filling up for fuel instead of going into the gas station, right? And getting a snack. I'm like, nah, I don't want to have to write that down. I'll just get fuel.
Yeah. I'll just be in, be out.
Yep. And the fun thing is our kids knew it, right? Like they knew what we were saying. It wasn't like it was a surprise. We're doing this. Like we told them, hey, this is the year we're going to cut back on some of these things. And they were older. They were teenagers, and so they had an idea, And by doing so, they stopped asking too. Like, hey, can we get this? They knew we were cutting back that year, and so it was. That was big in helping it happen too. Is letting them know, hey, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it, and this is what our goals are.
Yeah, which is huge because I think a lot of times parents don't maybe include their kids into those conversations, so it makes it easier for them to kind of go along with what you're doing because they understand why you're doing it. They're not just, mom and dad's not being any fun and they're, not letting us spend any money. You know what I mean? But I think it's also a good way probably to introduce financial literacy or continue teaching it to your kids through doing that and involving them.
It was. And they asked questions and, and they knew, we've always had talk finance. My wife is in banking and I'm here. So it's conversations we've had at the dinner table all the time, but it was being open with where we were financially with our kids and them understanding, oh, this is the income. Here's the expenses. They got to match up.
Yeah. Did you notice during that year that any of your guys' personal relationships or friendships or anything suffered? Because I feel like too, a lot of times people live beyond their means in an effort to keep up with their friends or their family or whatever it may be. I think less you see people say like, hey, I don't have the resources to do that right now, but I appreciate the invite. Like, did you guys during that time notice people were upset that you weren't maybe as social as you were before?
Not too much. We still got together, but instead of going to eat, we got together at our homes, which actually some of that was better.
Yeah.
I joke, but my brother-in-law, our family knew it because, like I say, my brother-in-law said you were going through the year of famine. It was something that we said, hey, here, we're going to cut back and this is why. And so a lot of people, outside of our family didn't know, but within our family knew and respected that situation. So we weren't hiding it, right? It wasn't like, hey, we're trying, and I think too often people with money are afraid to share. And with my wife and I, it didn't hinder us because we've always kept our money together and we worked for the common goal. I think sometimes it might be harder if husband and wife separate their finances.
Yeah.
And that could be a challenge. But I think if you talk and you're on the same page, it doesn't.
What are some changes that are coming up next year when it comes to personal finances that people need to be aware of?
A couple of changes. If you're participating in a retirement account and you're over 50, catch-up contributions are going to have to are supposed to go to a Roth funded account versus a pre-tax account.
Why, maybe in your opinion, do you think most people wait until the new year actually gets here to sit down and be like, okay, now I'm ready to change my spending habits and I'm, ready to do this big overhaul? Why? What risks does that create if you wait until the year is here to try to start making those changes? Or are there any risks? Is it harder maybe to create a new habit? Because I feel like in January everybody's trying to reinvent themselves and then there's all this hype around resolutions, but then, things get busy and before you know it, you've slipped into your old patterns.
Yeah, I do believe there are some risks. It is funny, everybody's like, hey, in January, I'm going to make these changes. They have these New Year's resolutions, and it's a time that everybody sets for themselves to make those New Year's resolutions, to move forward. The problem with that is, one, if you wait until January to make your planning, some of your spending that you may do, and sometimes they don't want to make a change because they don't want to look at what they're spending during Christmas and the holidays. And then it comes January, then they deal with the consequences of it versus actually putting a plan in place before. And so a lot of the times it's people making a New Year's resolution that says, hey, I want to make a change. But I always tell people the difference, even when it comes to taxes, the difference between tax planning and tax preparation is December 31st. If you're going to do something that may make a change for this year, some things have to be done before the end of the year. That would maybe be a qualified charitable donation using your IRA. That's going to have to be done before the end of the year, or you're going to miss out on an opportunity to do that. Some retirement plans that you want to fund need to be done before the end of the year, or you're going to miss out on opportunities. And so it's looking at that. And if you go into the holidays knowing, hey, we're going to have a better plan.
Yeah. How do people maybe kind of balance that, like trying to be more proactive and get a handle on their spending while we're in the midst of the holiday season and there's all this pressure to buy all these gifts and do all these things, and it just seems like a very busy time to try and make changes while also fulfilling like commitments you might already have.
Yeah, and the issue that you run into there is some people don't want to look at it. A lot of people don't. But if you take the time to say, hey, we are looking to change some of our financial habits or change some of our financial spending for next year, we may want to look at it before we go into the holiday and set ourselves with a budget and not overspend and maybe be more creative in your giving to where it's not necessarily a financial but more of a time commit that you give to people that will benefit them.
Yeah. How do you maybe change your mindset from reactive to proactive? Because I think it's easy if an issue's not happening right now to put things off, or I guess do you have any tips maybe for people to kind of be more proactive with their personal finances instead of kind of just letting it sit on the back burner by default?
I do. I work with as I work with my clients quite a bit. One of the questions I'll ask them is, if we were sitting here 5 years from today or 10 years today, what will have happened financially that would say you have been successful? And by looking ahead, it allows you to put things in perspective today that you may want to change, and then you become more proactive. And I find a lot of people, when they have a long-term goal or a target, they can aim at it. But if they're just walking aimlessly without having a place to go, they'll never get there. So the biggest aspect is sitting down and saying, where do I want to be next year, 5 years from today, 10 years from today, and then work backwards to say what needs to take place for me to get there.
When it comes to next year, have you noticed any clients who have some concerns, or have you seen any patterns of things that people are most worried about as the new year comes? Is it still like cost of living and inflation and the impacts of that?
Yeah, I was even just meeting with some clients this morning, and their biggest concern is cost of living. Having the ability to make sure they don't outlive their retirement. I deal with some younger clients that they're looking to purchase a home, and their concern is, am I going to be able to with home prices and where my income is, and so they still have those concerns of what is going to, how am I able to make it, but they also have concerns of saying, how much do I need to save to where I can retire in the future and not have to work for a long time. So it's meeting those two things together, and a lot of the concern is, am I putting enough away today and still being able to live and do the things I want to do?
Yeah. How do you kind of help ease those concerns?
Part of it is depending on their age, but some of the younger folks, I start with a basic budget of saying, here's your income, here's your expenses. Are they at least equal, right? And then saying, well, now once you have a little bit extra, how that discretionary funds, how are you going to spend that? Where do those funds need to go? You start with an emergency reserve and you build that up, and then can I take advantage of a retirement plan through work that they're going to match, and take that as the next step. but yet still have a little bit put in a budget to have some of the joy along the way as they're living their life.
Inflation's been an issue for people now, I feel like, since pandemic era. How long do you see this continuing to be a problem?
I think we're going to see a problem even with inflation slowing down a little bit. Wages need to continue to improve enough to allow income to catch up with some of those wages. And it's a mindset too, a little bit. When you go to the grocery store, you go out to eat and you see what that cost of that is now. It becomes a little frustrating because of the expense, but some of it is mindset of, you were used to what something cost and it's changed now. Interestingly enough, people are still going out to eat. People are still doing those things. It's just getting their mindset to adjust to the inflation, and then hopefully their wages can start catching up over the next few years.
If you could give anyone listening one proactive step that they can make right now to kind of position them better for 2026, what would that be?
I would tell them to sit down and take an inventory of where they're at. Are they stressed about finances? And what is causing that stress? Is it debt? Too often people don't take the time to look at where they're at. By doing that, you then can make decisions to move forward and go different directions. But if you never take the time to just sit down and say, where am I financially? Here's my income. Here's our expenses. If we're having stress about finances, what is causing that? And how can we fix that?
All right, that does it for this edition of Not Your Father's 2 Cents. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a very Merry Christmas, and I'll meet you back here in the next episode.